It's D-U-E, you tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and wow, it's week 10 in the NFL season. We have a lot to get into in this episode. We're going to talk fantasy football, we're going to talk betting, but we'll start this show off by taking a look at my week 10 NFL power rankings. The New York Jets nearly got off the schneid last week versus the New England Patriots, but found a way to blow a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter, subsequently losing their 9th straight game of the season. What was promising, though, was how well the offense looked throughout that ball game. Joe Flacco, up until the critical interception, was playing extremely well. He looked better than Sam Darnold has looked all season long, if we're being completely honest, which is, if you're the Jets, is a bit troubling. We'll see if they can get off the mat next week, as they are on a bye in week 10. Jacksonville's rookie quarterback Jake Luton out of Oregon State had a solid debut against the Houston Texans, but it still wasn't enough to help them snap a 7-game losing streak. It seems like the Jags, despite a good amount of talent sprinkled about the roster, is heading for a top 3 pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. Now, looking at teams 26 through 30, and the Detroit Lions prove once again that they just can't be trusted this season, getting blasted by Minnesota this past weekend. Daniel Jones had his second non-turnover game in his career, which subsequently led to a giant victory over Washington, who will now turn to Alex Smith at quarterback after the gruesome injury to Kyle Allen. And the Cowboys gave their best effort in about a month last weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers, getting strong play from quarterback Garrett Gilbert. Now, Houston got their second win of the season against the Jaguars last week, and one starts to wonder if that was the spark that's needed to turn their season around. They have the quarterback, they have the offensive weapons, but do they have the defense to carry them through the rest of the schedule? We shall see. Moving on to teams 21 through 25, and the Denver Broncos and Los Angeles Chargers, to me, are pretty much the same team right now. They're young, they're talented, and they are both struggling to learn how to win consistently in the NFL. Now, these two teams, I believe, will have their breakout in 2021. The Panthers have lost 4 straight games and are in danger of playing themselves right out of the playoff race if they can't turn things around quickly. And we'll see if the Bengals can continue to build off their Week 8 victory against the Tennessee Titans, as they were on a bye last weekend. Now, the Patriots got a much-needed win last week against the Jets, and low-key, quarterback Cam Newton has put together back-to-back strong games, looking like he regained his form that he had pre-COVID-19, and that bodes well for them the rest of the way this season. Now let's take a look at teams 16 through 20, and the Philadelphia Eagles are coming off of a bye week and hope to continue to put some distance between them and the rest of the teams in the NFC East as they take on the Giants up in East Rutherford. San Francisco was blasted by Green Bay last weekend after getting off to a strong start in that ball game. They are such a banged up team right now, it ain't even funny. And Chicago really needs their offense to kick in the gear, or they'll continue to find themselves sliding down these standings as well as these power rankings. The Falcons have won 2 out of the 3 games so far under interim head coach Raheem Morris, and they are finally starting to look like the team many projected them to be coming into the season. But the Minnesota Vikings are quietly bubbling underneath the surface, making a serious charge toward a wildcard berth. They are led by now MVP candidate Dalvin Cook at running back, who has 2 200-yard rushing games so far this season. As long as Cook stays healthy, he gives the Vikings a great chance to win every game. It's been amazing to watch him do damage on both ends of offense like he does, and again, has firmly placed himself in the thick of the MVP race because of his play. When looking at teams 11 through 15, you see a collection of squads that are 5-3 on the season for many different reasons. The Indianapolis Colts are looking like the shakiest one of the bunch, as they've lost 2 of their last 3 games and are seemingly only able to beat the bad teams that are on their schedule. The Cleveland Browns are coming off of a bye week and are getting running back Nick Chubb back healthy, which is a major addition for their offense, as he's one of the stars in the entire NFL. The Arizona Cardinals, they have to learn how to finish games. Actually, it's twofold. They either start slow and finish fast, or vice versa. And the Las Vegas Raiders have quietly positioned themselves in a good spot to secure that 5 seed in the AFC playoffs if the season ended today. They're playing as good as anyone is in the NFL right now. So are the Miami Dolphins, who have won 4 straight games. 2 of those are under their new starting quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. It's been a combination of strong defensive play and now a dynamic offense based on what we saw last week against the Cardinals. They have a huge test this week going up against a tough Chargers team that is a much better squad than their record indicates. So it will be a good test for Tua, as the Chargers defense could pose similar challenges to him as the Rams did a few weeks ago. So we'll see how he can build on his last 2 starts this week against the Chargers. Moving into the top 10, and the Bucs and Seahawks are coming off of bad losses in week 9, but still are 2 of the top teams in the NFC. Now, Green Bay looked like Green Bay from earlier in the year with their dismantling of the San Francisco 49ers last Thursday night, and Tennessee was able to get back on the winning track last weekend versus Chicago in what took a total team effort in order to get it done. But keep an eye out for the Los Angeles Rams. They are 5-3 on the season and do a lot of things very well on both sides of the ball. I think they're one of the more solid teams in the NFL, and coming off of their bye week will be primed to make a serious push for the NFC West division crown. And now we take a look at the top 5, featuring all teams coming off of impressive victories. Buffalo legitimately beat down the Seahawks last weekend, getting great play from quarterback Josh Allen. Baltimore got back on the right track offensively in the second half against Indianapolis, winning their 6th of the season. And the Saints beat the brakes off the Bucs last weekend in a laugher on Sunday night. And Kansas City just keeps on trucking with MVP candidate Patrick Mahomes, doing Patrick Mahomes-like things out there on the field. Pittsburgh has won their 8th straight game, giving them their best start in franchise history, and clinches Mike Tomlin's 14 consecutive non-losing season, which is also a franchise record and second all-time in the NFL. That's an impressive feat for a guy that some Steelers fans are anxious to get rid of. Either way, the Steelers are playing their best football. They're playing best in the league right now and have found many ways to get the job done out there on game day. Now let's take a look at NFL's Week 10 Thursday night kickoff between the Indianapolis Colts and Tennessee Titans. For the Colts in this ball game is going to be about how they go about beating the pressure of Tennessee. It's going to be about getting those backs out in space on a perimeter. Both Jonathan Taylor as well as Nyheim Hines are excellent receivers out of the backfield. Getting those guys one-on-one could be a winning formula, but for Tennessee, can they apply pressure without blitzing? They right now struggle to get to the quarterback. That's going to be up to Jeffrey Simmons and company to get pressure from within, and hopefully that can put Phillip Rivers in a situation where he's going to make some errant throws, some errant passes that could lead to turnovers. But I do like Tennessee in this ball game. Why? They have the trusted offense. They can lean on that ground game as well as the play action passing game for Ryan Tannehill. So I do see Tennessee knocking off Indianapolis on Thursday night. And we'll take a quick break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by 9th and Lux. Visit the website 9thandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW in his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. Like I talked about in the open, we're going to talk some best bets. And so here's a look at some of my favorite prop bets for the NFL heading into Week 10. I'm going to give you my lucky 7 for Week 10 in the NFL as far as prop bets are concerned. At plus 155, I believe the first score in that Baltimore Ravens New England Patriots ball game will be a Ravens touchdown. I like what I saw last weekend against the Indianapolis Colts. Their offense, especially in the second half, looks like it has gotten into gear, so I expect them to pick off right where they left off in that game, driving down the field and getting a touchdown. At plus 220, the Panthers, I believe, will score 3 touchdowns in their rematch against Tampa Bay. Listen, this Panthers offense can score, and if you followed our Best Bet show on Football Game Plan Network, you saw how consistent they have been over the course of the year. I like them to score 3 touchdowns against that Bucs defense. At plus 225, look for 3 first-half touchdowns total in that Rams-Seahawks game. I think that's a very solid number. The Rams are coming off of a bye, so they're going to be fresh. The Seahawks defense has given up the big play, and I do think both teams will find a way to find the end zone at least 3 times in the first half. At plus 340 in the Cleveland-Houston game, look for 3 to 4 total touchdowns scored. What was funny about this one is that the favorite in this ball game is 7 touchdowns scored at -115. So I think we'll see a much more defensive ball game. So that's why I'm going with 3 to 4 touchdowns total between the Browns and the Texans. At +350, look for the first score in that Giants-Eagles game to be a Giants field goal. I think the Giants offense has shown the ability to move the football well between the 20. I think that'll happen in this ball game. They had some success in their first matchup against Philadelphia. I think because of that, they have the confidence to go in and make that offense work. So look for them to drive down a football field, I believe, when they get the football and get a field goal out of it. Over in the Bills-Cardinals game, they're expecting a lot of points to be scored. This is another one with the favorite with 7 touchdowns or more scored, but I think we're going to see 3 to 4 touchdowns scored. The Bills defense, I believe, has gotten better. The Cardinals do provide a little bit of a matchup problem for Buffalo, so at +440, I do think this is great value to snag 3 to 4 touchdowns as opposed to the touchdown galore that they're expecting. Now, here's my biggest bet of the weekend as far as props are concerned. +1300. We won't see any turnovers in that Miami Chargers game. I think we'll see a well-played game on both sides of the field. Both teams will do a great job of protecting the football. Both quarterbacks, I believe, don't put the ball in harm's way. So we'll see a clean game, one that should come down to the wire at +1300. That's great value that can hit big for you if you're able to win. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, back here with football game plan analyst Chris James, and it's now time for Chris James's starting lineup and sitting lineup. And we'll start with your starting lineup, Chris, for week 10 in the NFL. Looking at this list, and there's a lot of great talent on here, but Stephon Diggs is quietly over 800 yards receiving so far in the season.
Absolutely. So in this particular matchup, they usually have a Patrick Peterson shadow. I think that they're going to move him around. They're going to try to. Buffalo just believes in no longer running the ball. So they're going to throw the ball around the yard. Arizona should give them some fits on defense. So they're going to have to pass, and Stephon Diggs is the guy. Even though John Brown had a big week last week, look to Stephon Diggs to exceed his numbers this week.
He's going to do a great job. That's a great matchup, by the way, him and Peterson. You look at your sitting lineup, and it's always fascinating to see guys that are on this list that you like, wow, this guy should have a great day above expectation. But let's look at Derrick Henry. He's a bell cow back, one of the few that's in this league, and you have him as a sit this week. Why?
Absolutely. And again, for those who are new to the show, this is not me suggesting that you should sit Derrick Henry in your year-long league. What I'm saying is maybe temper your expectations compared to the projection that you see. In this particular matchup, they're playing Indy. Indy's front seven does a really good job, and I think they're going to try their best to really make Ryan Tannehill beat them over the top. They're going to funnel things away from Derrick Henry, because when the Titans get going with Derrick Henry running the ball, that's when they win games and they're tough to stop. I think that's going to be key number one. Stopping Derrick Henry for Indy this week is a focus, and that doesn't lend itself to Derrick Henry having one of those monster games.
And that's going to be huge for them. If they don't have a monster game from Derrick Henry, that could be a problem for their team winning outright as a whole. Now let's look at your sleepers. Now these are always interesting. There's some good names here as well. One name in particular, your quarterback, Nick Mullens against the Saints. Why do you like Nick Mullens this week as a potential sleeper?
Absolutely. So we talked about contrarian picks earlier, and I mentioned the Saints defense against San Francisco. Listen, Nick Mullens has the propensity to turn the ball over and does do some things that I don't like. We saw that against Green Bay. But guess what? They're going to have to put up points. They're going to figure out ways to get the ball out of his hands quickly, much like they did to Richie James last week. And what's going to happen is he's probably going to get some, if at worst, garbage time yards and maybe a touchdown late like they did last week. So he should be a play for you if you do have a guy on a bye and that whole pipeline is dry on the waiver wire. Looking at the other guys, Jordan Wilkins against Tennessee. It's a short week, and what we've seen for the last 2 weeks in a row, no matter what they're saying about the health of their starter Jonathan Taylor, the end of the game has been Jordan Wilkins. So on a short week, you want to pick him up, especially if you need a back, because he'll probably end up doing the same thing against Tennessee's defense that has an improved secondary. Let's look at Josh Reynolds against the Seattle Seahawks. Again, everyone's expecting those exterior receivers to do a lot of work. I know Cooper Kupp works in the slot, but they're probably going to put some focus on Woods and Kupp this week. They're going to have big numbers, but Josh Reynolds can end up getting you a touchdown like, I think Gabriel Davis did the same thing in Seattle last week. And then Mike Gesicki, we talked about him earlier. He's technically a sleeper now because no one's expecting anything from him. I think he can have a quality week against the Chargers. And the final one is a sneaky play, I think, and that's the Vikings against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. They've played improved football over the last couple of weeks on defense. They slow things down, and the Bears have shown that they're the slowest offense, literally by pace, in the entire league. This is perfect for a defense to get you some points and not give up a whole bunch of scores.
That's CJ giving you great information for your fantasy football team this weekend. Follow him on Twitter at CJFlorida9. Subscribe on YouTube to youtube.com/Football Game Plan to check out the Football Game Plan's Fantasy Football Starting Lineup show. We'll take a quick break and be back with more NFL All 32. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/Go-Go Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/Go-Go Offense. Now let's take a look at some of the games on the Week 10 schedule, and we'll start in the 1 o'clock window where the New York Giants play host to the Philadelphia Eagles. Rematch games are always important because it's about adjustments and about what can you do better the second time around. For Philly, it's about making sure if they have a lead, they have to close out a game against a team that knows them very well. For the Giants, it's about tying up loose ends and making sure you don't turn the ball over and convert on your layups. When you look at this matchup, you look at what Philly does well. I think coming off the bye will help them out. I do like the Eagles in this ball game. Houston travels to Cleveland to take on the Browns, and what I said earlier should be a very good defensive matchup. Now, the Browns do get back Nick Chubb, which should be a problem for that Houston Texans defense, but on offense, Houston has the ability to work touchdown to check down. I think because of that element, it's going to put a lot of pressure on those guys out on the perimeter in the secondary for the Browns. It's going to be up to Baker Mayfield to protect the football, and if he can do that and be a compliment, they have a great chance to win. I do like Houston in the upset here out there in Cleveland against the Browns. Washington travels to Detroit to take on the Lions, and we're going to see Alex Smith start this game for the Washington football team, and if he can bring balance to the offense and not turn the ball over like he did against the Giants, this offense should be fine, and defense should be able to be a complement off of a very solid offensive attack. For Detroit, it's about finding a win. They have to find ways to get that win, and when you look at what they do well, I think they can run the football. I think they can have some success throwing the football as well against this Washington defense. So I am going to trust Detroit once again. I know they burned me last weekend, but I will take the Lions to knock off Washington. Jacksonville travels to Green Bay to take on the Packers, and we'll see if Jake Luton can have an encore performance. I thought he played well against Houston, but it's going to be up to him to cut down on the turnovers, as always is the case with young quarterbacks, but also for a defense to really hunker down and find ways to generate pressure against Aaron Rodgers. For the Packers, the run game is always there when they want it to be. I like how they're finding other targets in the passing game. We saw that against San Francisco. I think they make light work of Jacksonville. I'm taking Green Bay. Tampa travels to Carolina in a rematch from earlier in the year against the Panthers. And when you look at the Bucs defense, I thought they played well against New Orleans. It was the offense that had a series of 3 and outs throughout the first half. So I look for their offense to get back in the gear against the young Panthers defense that tends to give up a big play or two at times throughout the course of a game. But the Panthers have to find ways to really convert those opportunities when they move the football down the field. They've been sputtering a little bit as of late, and we don't know how healthy Christian McCaffrey can be, but we've seen them play well without McCaffrey. I do think the Bucs will get back on the winning track. I'm taking Tampa. Denver travels to Vegas to take on the Raiders. This is a really important game for the Broncos, one where a young team can build some confidence. We saw them do that against Los Angeles, the Chargers, but now they have to do it against a very balanced team against the Raiders. And for the Raiders, if they really want to be serious about the playoffs this season, their defense will really have to get better significantly. They're going to have to start in this ball game affecting the pocket versus Drew Lock, finding ways to turn the ball over. But if they can play well defensively, they have a chance not only in this game, but long term. I do like their offense against that Broncos defense. I'm taking the Raiders. In Miami, the Dolphins play host to the Los Angeles Chargers, and we talked about this before. 2 young football teams with 2 young first-round quarterbacks, and this should be an exciting game because when you look at Miami, they're playing well on both sides of the field. They're playing great special teams. The Chargers are playing well enough for about 58 minutes in the ball game, but have issues in closing out those games. They're going to have to find ways to finish, and if that's the key, they can go to Miami and get a win. But I do like the mojo right now with the Dolphins. Despite the lack of a true game-breaking run game, they're finding ways to be dynamic on offense. I love they get so many targets involved. I'm taking the Dolphins here to knock off the Chargers. The Bills travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals in a huge cross-divisional matchup in the NFL this weekend. The Bills defense looks to have caught fire against Seattle, forcing a lot of turnovers, getting after the quarterback. Let's see if that can keep up against a very active and mobile quarterback once again in Kyler Murray. But their offense, I thought, was more of the story than anything, because Josh Allen got back to Josh Allen form that we saw earlier in the season. That's going to be huge in this ball game for the Cardinals. It's about starting the game, how they tend to finish games. They have to find a way to start strong. If they can do that and really maximize on their opportunities and not try to wait for the chunk play, they have a chance. But I do like the Bills in this ball game defensively. I can trust them a little bit more so than Arizona. So look for Buffalo to go on the road and get the win. Seattle takes on the Rams, and it's going to be up to Seattle to really hunker down and not turn the ball over. Russell Wilson has been the culprit in the last two losses for Seattle. The turnovers have to stop. They're facing a team in the Rams that they match up very well against. For Los Angeles, coming off that bye week, we saw the Miami Dolphins defense give them problems with pressure. They probably won't see that amount of pressure against Seattle. I'm taking the Rams in this one to win in a tight game. San Francisco travels to New Orleans to take on the Saints. San Francisco finds ways to be competitive, but I don't think they're going to have that much success against the Saints team coming off of a beatdown of Tampa Bay. So look for the Saints to continue rolling along in the NFC, moving their record to 7-2. Cincinnati takes on Pittsburgh in a chance for a young football team like the Bengals to make a very good statement game against an undefeated squad in Pittsburgh. For Cincinnati, coming off of a bye, we saw them play really well against Tennessee, which has some elements of what you're going to see against Pittsburgh from a defensive standpoint. So it's going to be up to Joe Burrow, that offensive line, to continue to beat the pressure throughout the course of the game. I don't see much of that happening, though. The Steelers are riding high. They got their scare last week against Dallas. I think they come out focused, take care of business, and knock off the Bengals. Baltimore travels to New England to take on the Patriots. This is a big game for both teams, as Baltimore is trying to keep pace in the AFC North, and the Patriots trying to continue to win games to get themselves back in the thick of the playoff race. For Baltimore, you want to see their offense get back to what we saw them do in the second half of that game against Indianapolis. I do think against New England, there's going to be some opportunities to work the intermediate area of the field, and that's where they tend to thrive. For the Patriots, it's about defense, and can they contain Lamar Jackson in that run game? We saw them last year not be able to do that. This year, their defense isn't as talented as it was then. I foresee the Ravens hitting the ground running, literally and figuratively, against New England. I'm taking Baltimore. And finally, we have the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Chicago on Monday Night Football to take on the Bears. The Vikings offense, like we said, is all Dalvin Cook right now, but he's playing lights out. He's in a zone. And defensively, they're the direct beneficiary of a strong run game because it's allowing them to get off the field. They'll get off the field a lot against Chicago. I don't trust the Bears offense. That's the biggest issue right now for this Bears football team. Look for Minnesota to move their record to 4-5. So that's it for this week's edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Special shout out to Chris James at CJ Florida 9. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.
It's D-U-E-U till I see you. By this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Man, we about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Yeah.